Maranatha, and welcome to the Septuagint versus the Masoretic, the only ministry in the world comparing the Septuagint and the Masoretic texts in order to find out the truth about the Bible. Today we're looking at Deuteronomy chapter 17. There are 20 verses. In verse 3, we see the first significant difference here. It says here, He commanded you not to do, versus I have not commanded. So we can see that Moses is speaking in the Septuagint versus Yah is speaking directly to them. Verse 4, an addition of heard, you have heard. It says here, the thing really took place versus behold, true, the thing certain. So one is reality, one is somebody's opinion, and they're just sure of something. Verse 5, an addition of which have committed that wicked thing unto your gates. That was completely added. And next is verse 8, cause versus plea. Between cause and cause, and then it says here plea and plea. So one is just making a plea, begging. The other one is saying this is a cause. This is something that is a reasonable demand to be asking for. A plea could simply be complaining. We have an omission of contradiction and contradiction. That is an important distinction, an important specific matter that has been omitted. And it says here, matters of judgment versus matters of controversy. It's one thing to have something controversial, but it's another thing altogether to have a matter of judgment that really deserves judgment. It requires more discerning judges. Verse 9, a significant difference. Actually, our first one says here, they shall search out the matter, talking about the priests, the Levites. They shall search out the matter, in brackets, so it's not really there. They shall search out and report the judgment to you. Versus in the Masoretic, you inquire. So it's not the Levites, you're doing it. You make the inquiry. And then after you do that, after you investigate, the Levites will then show you the sentence of judgment. Well, how can they even decide what will be the sentence if they didn't do their due diligence? They didn't investigate. Doesn't make any sense. So in the Septuagint, we can see that it is clear. It is clearly the job of the Levites to search out the matter. Versus in the Masoretic, it seems to be the individual's responsibility to make inquiry, to investigate. Verse 10, an addition of Yah shall show you. That was added. And then it says here, shall have been appointed by law to you. Shall have been by law appointed to you. So you shall act according to this thing, according to the standard. You shall observe to do all whatsoever shall have been by law, meaning the Torah, appointed to you, versus according to all that they inform you. So no, it's not whatever they decide is going to be the standard and whatever they tell you, their opinions. No, it's according to the law. That's a pretty big distinction. Let me just add that as a big difference. So this is not merely opinion. It is not opinion, but based on Torah. And I should say the opinion of people, or the Levites' opinion. It is not based on the Levites' opinion, because that is a possible pitfall that you can make that mistake. Verse 11, we have an addition of the word sentence, according to the sentence of the law. So again, this is leaning towards the the opinions of the Levites. So that is actually pretty dangerous. So leaning on the opinions of the Levites versus the law, the Torah, in the Septuagint. Just denote that. And it says here, which they shall declare to you. So this is in the Septuagint. You shall do according to the law and to the judgment which they shall declare to you. So they do have an opinion. They have a judgment to make, and you will do according to the judgment which they shall declare to you, versus which they shall teach you. No, it's not something else they're teaching you on top of the Torah. This is simply their judgment, and you have to go by that. And it says here, declare to you versus tell you. That's not a big difference, but it's simply semantics. It says here, you shall not swerve to the right hand or to the left from any sentence which they shall report to you, versus you shall not decline from the sentence which they shall show you to the right hand or to the left. So one seems to be implying you should not refuse, don't decline, or perhaps in the Old English it basically means to swerve, but it can be misinterpreted to mean don't refuse. But here you can make your decision, but don't swerve to the right or to the left. Don't stray too far from whatever they have declared. So don't deviate versus do not refuse. We have report, the word report, which they shall report to you, versus to show you. Verse 12, haughtiness, the man whosoever shall act in haughtiness, which means arrogance or a feeling of superiority, versus the man that will do presumptuously, which means somebody stepping outside of their bounds, which are, to be honest, similar meanings. And it says here, stands to minister in the name of Yah, your Elohim, versus stands to minister there before Yah, your Elohim. So we can see that this individual, these people are representing Yah in a way. They're there in the name of Yah, kind of like ambassadors. They're not just existing, versus just existing and not doing so under his authority. So they're not just there to be ministers out of the blue. No, they're doing so, yes, in his name, the Levites. And a mission is, I found an omission here saying, who shall preside in those days? So the judge who shall preside in those days. So that's a specific time frame. And it says here, remove the evil one. You shall remove the evil one out of Israel, versus put away the evil. Verse 13, commit impiety. Actually, I just want to talk about that a little bit. So people say that it's not the person that's evil, it's the actions. Here it seems to imply that, no, it is the person. Is this symbolic of Satan, or is this something else? But it does say evil one, so maybe you're removing them until they repent. I'm not sure. That's an interesting question. Verse 13, commit impiety, which means disrespect shown to Elohim. Can also mean blasphemy and profanation, versus presumptuously, which again, we went over that. Presumptuous means to step outside your bounds. So we can see it is a lot more blatant in verse 13 that impiety is a great disrespect shown to God, a disgraceful disrespect. Blasphemy, profanation, just very serious charges, a serious action that will have serious consequences. Not just stepping out of your bounds. This is a great deal of disrespect and shameful. Verse 14, a continuous difference here of ruler versus a king. Verse 15, you shall not have power. We've seen that in the previous chapter, which means authority, to set over you a stranger because he is not your brother. What does it say in the Masoretic? You may not set a stranger over you, which is not your brother. So one is saying, don't do it. This is a suggestion. The Septuagint is saying you do not have, full stop, you do not have the authority to do this. It's not within your authority. To do this would be to go outside of the boundaries, to be presumptuous, step outside of the law and the framework of the law. Verse 16, an addition of henceforth. You shall henceforth return no more that way. That was added. Verse 17, multiplying wives. This is the commandment talking about the kings or the rulers over Israel should not multiply to themselves wives, lest his heart turn away. What does this mean? I explain a little bit here that multiplying wives is not even about pagan wives, but multiplying wives, period. Doing so has the consequence of the ruler, the potential ruler, having his priorities in conflict with what the wives want, their desires. Women can be very persuasive creatures. The women selected to be his wives are most likely young and have a high libido. They're not going to be mature women who are going to be very submissive. Perhaps they will be stealing away the ruler's strength and vigor because of their intimate relations, and thus the ruler will not be able to make the best judgments due to his weakened body and mind. So it would be much better to have a few wives who are spiritually minded and generous. Those tend to be older women. Just kind of generalizing there, but that tends to be the case. And not many wives, hundreds and thousands of wives who are carnally minded like King Solomon did, who are covetous and selfish, perhaps. I have to add, yes, it is true. King Solomon's wives were not mostly Israelites. They were mostly of the other nations surrounding them that worshipped other Elohim. Would it be better if he had 1,000 wives who all worshipped Elohim and were of Israel? Perhaps, but again, it doesn't take away the point that a woman who is being selected, or women who are being selected, will be most likely young. And again, high libido. They will be giving birth, and then the king's attention, the ruler's attention will be divided between ruling the kingdom, doing what Elohim wants, versus the desires of the wives, the concubines, and also the desires and needs of the children who would be part of that as well. As well as not to mention the political complexities if you are making alliances with other nations, as King Solomon did through these marriages. Okay, moving on. Verse 18 says, established, when he shall be established in his government, versus when he sits upon the throne of his kingdom. So established means this ruler has been properly trained and prepared and is ready to rule competently, versus he is basically physically sitting on the throne. He doesn't have to be prepared. So book, it says here, he shall write for himself, the ruler, this repetition of the law, into a book by the hands of the priests, the Levites. So the book is made by the Levites, versus the book, it says book out of before the priests, the Levites. So this book could be made by the ruler himself. It just needs to be in the presence of the Levites physically. You can have that little loophole there. Seems to be the Levites are manufacturing this book. They're the ones putting the effort and the time and the materials to fabricating this book. It is simply the ruler who is writing in this book. That's my assumption there. Verse 19, your Elohim, fear your Elohim versus his Elohim. So it seems to be more inclusive of the community of Israel, of the kingdom of Israel, It's not just his Elohim, and it's not a private Elohim. It's a communal Elohim. It's the Elohim of the nation and the ruler. Verse 20, his sons, the last verse here, that his heart be not lifted up. This is why he's writing this copy of the law, this repetition, so that his heart be not lifted up above his brothers and sisters, that he depart not from the commandments on the right or on the left, that he and his sons may reign long in his dominion among the children of Israel. So what is the difference here? In the Masoretic, it says his children, which seems to imply women are not to rule. Has there ever been a queen of Israel? I don't recall so. So that's all for this chapter, Deuteronomy 17. I think what really stands out to me is multiplying wives. Why is it not wise to have a harem or multiple wives, and especially wives who are young? Although it doesn't say that in the text, I think that's the implication, that they are young, have a high libido. And again, women are very persuasive. We saw that with Adam and Eve. We saw that with Samson and Delilah, and just throughout human history, and even today with the internet, a lot of women are getting a lot of clicks just for the fact of being a woman and being attractive. So that's all I have for you for this video. Thank you very much for your time. May God bless you and make your way prosperous. Till next time, you've been watching the Septuagint versus the Masoretic. Maranatha, the Lord is coming.